Good afternoon and welcome to LunchtimeSeries with Kevin, where we add value to people's lives, happening every day at 12 on ebuzzradio.com. Joining me for today's Lunchtime Coaching segment, we have a lover of learning and new insights, constantly finding himself in the company of those who discuss ideas, innovation, and the cutting edge of new insights. We have the director and principal coach of Rescript Coaching. Please welcome Jan Niemand. Jan, how are you doing?
Brilliant. Thanks for having me, Kevin. How are you doing?
Good. I'm wonderful. I'm had a long weekend, thankfully, because I had to go and do some training in the Western Cape, and got back yesterday. It was quite an ordeal because I lost my wallet at the airport. I was running around like a crazy person, but besides that, it was really good.
Nice. All these things that make us grow stronger or develop weird coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. So when you and I first had this conversation, you were introduced by Dr. Marcel Hutton, and him and I have had quite a number of conversations already. And fantastic conversations, and love the insights and the impact of what he shares. But when you and I started chatting, there was an angle that you spoke about, and a sort of what's the word? Sort of a direction that you speak quite specifically to around your brain, your gut, your body. Don't you want to sort of tell us more? Could briefly tell us who you are, what it is you do, and what it is we're going to talk about today?
Brilliant. So Kevin, it's been an interesting journey up to now. I think one of the things is for me at least, and for many people that I've talked to, is once you've discovered coaching in its full essence and what it can mean for people, for teams, for organizations, whatever the application is that you choose to apply it in. It's an absolutely fantastic human development and intervention mechanism or modality. But obviously within coaching, because it's a huge industry, and it doesn't look like it obeys the normal economic rules and regulations of normal economic booms and busts, that type of stuff. It's just growing exponentially globally. And there's a lot of researchers that are saying that the reason why this is probably happening is we've lived in this hyper-connected, complex, extremely diverse, inclusive, yet difficult to navigate world, and the complexity is just increasing. I mean, we all know the whole VUCA concept. It's kind of become a norm to talk about it. But within coaching, obviously, you have your sub-modalities, or let's call it models, techniques, methodologies, whatever you want to call it. But to address this in this hyper complex world, obviously coaching is speeding up in terms of development and research. And I, per happenstance, well, I don't actually think it's that coincidental. I stumbled upon about 4 or 5 years ago in my own journey upon this unique perspective in coaching. And it's basically called your multiple brain integration techniques. So many people think of a brain, obviously, as the thing that sits inside your skull, or at least then has a tail down your spine, your backbone, and that it is your central nervous system. It is your main processing center. And the reason why I say processing center is it's fascinating that the moment we go beyond the central nervous system into the autonomic nervous system, into the branchings, things get very interesting. So there are some technical definitions as to what is a brain, what encompasses a brain, or what comprises a brain.
Yeah.
And some of the functional definitions or the structural definitions along with that, you need at least a large number of neurons and ganglia, sensory neurons, motor neurons. You need complex neural bundles, support cells like glial cells, astrocytes. You need your protein mixes. You need myelination. So it's all these fancy terms. But what's most striking, for something to be really called a brain, or at least an intelligence center by science or neuroscience, is you need functional attributes. This conglomeration of neurons needs to perceive and assimilate new information, process information. So I must be able to select, is this helpful? Is it not? Can I use it? Can I not? Memory storage, and fascinatingly, memory access, or then a rudimentary form of learning. And when you apply that definition to parts or clusters of organs in our body, they actually fit the description of a brain. And I'm here to talk about two of these neural clusters in particular. They are found in the heart, your physical heart. It is a pump. It's a glorious pump, and it should please continue pumping. Otherwise, we end the conversation right here. But it's much more than just a pump. There's a lot happening there on a neurological level and on a feedback system back to your central nervous system that your cardiologists are only now beginning to realize. But this is powerful stuff. We don't understand all of it. We don't have proper terminology to understand all of it. And many cardiologists say, listen, it's a pump. But there are camps in neurocardiology that is beginning to question whether this is just a pump, especially in terms of people's subjective experience of their own heart. And more on that a little bit later. But and to go back to the definition of what is a brain, well, then your entire digestive tract technically then is a gut brain. It's stinky plumbing, very efficient stinky plumbing, but it's much more than that. Especially when we start understanding how these neural clusters, brains, I'm hesitant sometimes to call them brains in the sense that many people think, okay, but clearly they're not on par with this glorious thing up in my skull. They're not, I fully agree. But there's a lot more happening in terms of how we experience ourselves on a neurological level if we consider that both the heart and the gut definitely perceive and assimilate information, process information, have clear memory storage and memory access or learning. So that's to kick off the discussion.
So, guys, if you've just joined us, very complicated conversation we've just had, because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like what? So to dumb it down for people like me, just to like bring it into context, is we have a brain, we have a heart brain, we have a gut brain, and recognizing these three central nervous systems, or sort of systems that we have in our bodies, is really essential, because for different reasons have different impacts on how we perform and how we actually live life. Is that how we tie that conversation together simplistically?
Exactly. You see, it's got coaching implications. This is it's not just a fantastic mindfulness experiment. It's not just it ties in with mindfulness, obviously. It can tie in with many other disciplines like meditation or prayer, if that's the direction that you're going in. and it also very specifically links with research in what we call embodied cognition. So this means we don't think and then have a like a puppet marionette thing going, and then start acting in the world. Embodied cognition means that your entire body is actually a sensory intelligence system, and the heart and the gut play a conscious role in processing information, making decisions, and navigating life.
Conscious, hang on. So your heart and your gut are consciously involved.
Yep.
Consciously. And when you say consciously, are we aware of the fact that it's happening when it's happening?
So this is the fascinating part for me. Consciousness is much more than just being awake, right?
Yeah.
Being awake, or within your brainwave state of being consciously aware of your surroundings, is but a form of being conscious. We can become consciously aware of, when we go to the heart, we can become aware of affect. That is, how does this affect us? How do I relate to this? How do I emotionally perceive this? Now, this is fascinating. If I, just to give you an example, if someone is, for instance, in conflict with me, I can either navigate the conflict purely with my head brain,
Yeah.
factual, intellectual, sticking to it, or and this is where emotional intelligence starts becoming part of the conversation, I can include my heart in the discussion. And if I arrive at a deadlock in conflict, I usually then have to check in, like, okay, so how does my heart relate to this? In the sense of, the moment I physically move my consciousness down into the heart, because the heart is responsible for relational affect, emotive control, and values, how I perceive what is valuable. In hard neuroscience, you call it salience, but for us normal human beings, it's called what do I value? The conversation changes radically, because the moment I go heart, I have to include empathy. It's a function of the heart, because the heart ties directly into that processing center of here on top of maintaining social cohesion, purely by putting my hand physically on where my heart is perceived to be.
Yeah.
I increase your empathy level, and you cannot help it.
That's just insane, right? Is that your body's way of knowing, yeah, this means something, and because the signal of it, the connection to it, the intention of it, the meaning that we give it, all of it sort of implies empathy.
Exactly. Look, empathy is it's, you've got fantastic training on it, and we've got fantastic courses on it. But the fact, listen to what we're doing, Kevin. The fact that we are training people in empathy implies that we're accessing it through the wrong brain.
Yeah.
It's content driven. I mean, I've got a 3-year-old son. I didn't tell him this. I didn't teach him this. But the moment we go into the realm of maintaining social cohesion, affect, relationship, this morning he told my wife, we dropped him off at school, and he said, "Oh," he made a little face like that, and I said, "Okay, so what now?" And he said, "My heart is going to miss you." It's a 3-year-old consciously experiencing something in this region, and he immediately connects it with relational affect. It's the function of the physical heart brain. And there's some interesting things in ignoring this brain, Kevin, linked to heart attack, linked to heart disease, linked to interesting stuff of broken heart syndrome, Takotsubo, where people physically experience damage to the heart because of a broken relationship that they found central to their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working with a lady who's lost her son recently, and she said the moment she thinks of him, she has an excruciating pain in her heart. And the moment she moves on and does something else, the pain goes away. So in other words, we have to be consciously aware to access this let's call it a library of intelligence, but we ignore it at our own peril.
So, I mean, I just want to backtrack quickly because, you know, connecting those dots now, you spoke about conflict. You know, very often we try to use conflict in our heads, but when we go and move down to our heart space, suddenly the function and the impact of what empathy can do for the conflict gives us a different sense of how to deal with the conflict.
That's it.
How would you, in that same conversation, how would you move that into the gut? What is the gut telling you?
So the gut is a fascinating part. Many people struggle to access the gut, and it can be for different reasons. I don't want to go into too much because then we start seeing these you know, we start projecting and hallucinating stuff that just might not be there.
Yeah.
But the gut is a fascinating one. Its primary functions have to do with self-preservation and safety. Do I feel okay with this? Mobilization, you know, you having the guts to do something.
Yeah.
And fascinatingly, core identity.
Wow. Core identity. You have to, like, because now I'm interested. Like, how would you relate gut to core identity?
So when you are gutted by an outcome,
yeah,
what was at stake?
Your identity. Yeah. Very often it can be.
Very often. When you are accused, for instance, of doing something wrong or terribly wrong, which you did not do, many people become nauseated or disgusted.
Yes, I'm completely realizing this as you speak. It's true.
And fascinating, if the gut is, it can be a little bit weird and tricky for people to access it until you hit a nerve in terms of their core being. Then the gut is very loudly present.
Wow. So give us a simple, like you would work through a bunch of questions around being gutted. So someone did something to you and it really hurt you. It really disgusted you that they actually took that approach. Is it a set of questions that you're working through? Is it a conversation? What happens during that process?
What happens there? So yes, I'm going to do an NLP thing, and you're going to laugh. Yes, and it's so. This is the fascinating part now, Kevin. You cannot not communicate, right? And it's the same idea here. You cannot not multiple brain. We are embodied cognitive beings. So we might think that we spend all of our time here up in our heads, and it can be. But at some point, you're going to deal with a difficult relationship. At some point, you're going to deal with a situation where you are truly in danger of losing something. And then the gut will definitely start activating unless there's something blocking it. So how do we use this in coaching? It's questions. It is becoming very aware of what is happening with your client. How are they multiple braining? And is the sequence serving them? Is a center being swamped? In other words, not barely speaking, but being drowned out. Are they clearly avoiding an intelligence center altogether?
Yeah.
Are they overly dominant in an intelligence center? And it's not just the head that can dominate. Sometimes we can lose so much perspective in terms of our relationships that it's just heart, 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 heart. And the heart can do with a lot of help from the head going, let's just manage this in smaller chunks. So it's all about how you are multiple braining, and does it serve the best outcome?
Yeah. So would you, two questions. So is this a practice that's directly correlated to neuroscience? And then secondly, well, let's first cover that.
Yes. So the big thing about neuroscience is that we are beginning to discover that from various spheres of learning and research, that, for instance, cognitive linguistics talks about how language affects our perception, our brain, how we talk affects how we feel, that type of stuff. Like I already spoke about neurocardiology and neurogastroenterology. All these fields are pointing towards this thing that there's a lot more going on. And it's bringing those fields together into a coaching modality that Embodied and the authors of Embodied, Grant Susulu and Marvin Oka, around about 10 years ago said, but hang on, there's a lot more going on here in terms of people's subjective experience. And the neuroscience is highlighting there is a lot going on here, but bringing it all together into a modality that is useful for people's coaching, that we can attribute to Grant and Marvin, and it works as a coaching approach to help people almost integrate their multiple intelligences a lot more seamlessly for wiser decision making. That's the link with coaching was made by Grant and Marvin, and I must say, as a coaching modality, it really helps because it just shoots up people's awareness way beyond of what are the facts or what's busy going on. It's all about, how do I relate to this? Do I actually feel safe? I mean, you know that one of the core things of NLP is, now that we've discussed this, we need to actually take action, because that's where the change happens. Well, if the gut isn't safe, secure, and it doesn't fit with my identity, action is not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's my next question, because from an NLP perspective, part of your brain, what we know, what we preface, and what we consider as an absolute essential, as foundational, is your brain instinctively distorts, generalizes, and deletes information, and essentially that will give a certain meaning, filtering it through whatever belief system or memory that you have about a certain something, and essentially still drives a lot of behavior. But as you say now, considering that that is a lot of brain conversation being had, and what about the rest of the conversation around a situation that you might be experiencing? Because I'm listening about the heart being so closely connected to empathy. If you look at corporates in the world today, one of the key attributes that leaders are specifically speaking to, qualities that leaders should be having and practicing, is empathy.
Yeah.
So if you want to break it down into sort of a simplistic look at it, and you kind of go, well, basically the heart needs to be in organization.
That's it.
People have to bring their heart into the organization, because the moment you start there, then everyone starts getting on board with this.
And it's
really, but it really starts speaking true to I've seen it in that, like, random things that are coming up at the moment, and quite specifically, like psychological safety, building resilience, the empathic way of doing business, having far more engagement, connected conversation than ever before, based on the fact that COVID has impacted our lives. So all of these things are starting to point back at humans and how humans do humans better.
Mm-hmm. It's and within the Embed community, we talk about how are you humaning, because you are a process.
That is fantastic. I love. I'm sorry. Jan told me I need to be humaning more.
And it's all about the quality of your humaning, and how many perspectives are you allowing into your humaning, without it becoming woo-woo and spiritual. Multiple perspectives lead to greater wisdom. It's the basic law of requisite variety. The more options available, that generally we don't want to overindulge ourselves with options, but we generally arrive at more than two, where we get past the dilemma. And what is fascinating is just the insights people receive, and it's not very far within the coaching methodology even. If you just allow the heart to speak on a certain situation, the gut to voice its concerns, usually the decision-making quality ups exponentially.
So when you say speaks, right, and is that a moment where you're actually recognizing that function, that space within your body, and kind of going, okay, cool, what is the heart space saying?
That's it. And we frequently use the word speech. It's a metaphor of the head brain going, okay, I need to let a better one would be communicates. The heart communicates a lot differently than the head brain. It can communicate with a sense of serenity or peace. We can have palpitations. We can have a physical pain. We can have a longing. We can have an emptiness. We can have a smell, a sound, a sudden memory popping up. The gut is even brings you to a standstill of an inability to act, and the pit in your stomach, butterflies, nausea, sometimes a little bit more extreme than I've seen clients work through a very tough sense of forgiveness, and then they actually would need a pail to quickly get rid of what needs to come out.
Yeah.
So it's a different language, and it's linked to their core their physiological functions, but there's a blurry line of the core functions of these intelligence centers are critical because they're popping up all over the place in leadership training, in mindfulness, in emotional intelligence. And it's kind of makes sense, because the moment we start accessing the heart, for instance, people become very aware of their situation in a completely different way, because a different part of the head brain is being accessed or used for processing.
Yeah. It's so fascinating, and I can't wait to actually do this program with you. So how does this relate to mindfulness? So, I mean, no, mindfulness is mindfulness, but in your words, how do you give us that insight?
So there's I tend to view mindfulness as very distinct. It's an approach and it's shown a lot of promise in a lot of areas for helping people cope with different things. So how does this relate? I would call the multiple brain integration perspective mindfulness's brother or sister. Very closely related, but both can have very stimulating and intelligent conversations with each other. Currently, embraining is still very much a coaching modality. And I think how coaching has made sense of mindfulness is probably more with the word self-awareness, self-discovery. And I think this is where Embed really comes into the fore, because if a lot of the time people are plainly just not aware, and creating that awareness with the head brain can be a lot of work, because we're basically asking the central nervous system to do something that it is ill-equipped to do.
Yeah, wow. I love that. So, last question that I have here is if you had to give us sort of some practicality to actually start looking at using our wonderful body, brains, what is like a 3-pointer that we can start like recognizing as easy to start paying attention to?
Wonderful. A very simplistic a little takeaway from the model is purely just asking the right questions for the neural centers to actually fill the gap. So for the head brain, you can ask yourself regarding a situation or a presenting problem, what do I already know about this?
Yeah.
What do I see? Relating to organs in the head. What do I perceive? What do I factually know to be true? What do I really understand? And then you go one level deeper into the heart brain. And then you change your questions is, what do I long for? It's a completely different response, hey?
Yeah, no, I'm laughing because as you're talking, I'm going, okay, what do I see? I see this, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then when you say, what do you long for? I'm going, oh my goodness, I long for something I didn't think even the longing even attributes to what I was just focused on. You don't realize.
After all is said and done, what is the most valuable thing for you?
Wow. Okay. That changes it.
It really does. And we can go into the emotive space of what rings true for you.
Yeah.
And then one level deeper is in the gut is, at what point would you be willing to act on this?
Wow, that's a whole set of new questions. I'm gonna start doing this today. Wow. Yeah.
What do you need?
Yo, before we go, I mean, I don't need you to share all these solutions right now. But what have you seen? Give us some practical things that have happened, because I'm just thinking, currently or recently, having a difficult moment with something that happened at my daughter's school, and prefacing the conversation like this, would have probably given her a little bit of different insight on how she or what she would have answered. So give us some practical examples of where this has worked and how the outcomes have changed.
So one of the most practical examples I can give you, Kevin, is would you allow me to share my screen with you?
Absolutely, sure.
So when I first decided to really start listening to my gut in terms of safety, self-preservation, what do I need? Not just heart and head. I was very heart. It's all about giving and giving back to the community and finding ideas and solving the problems, but very little about what do I need. So this is it sharing? Wait. Sorry. Let's share a window.
Yeah.
So this was me prior to listening to the gut.
All right.
And doing a lot of gut work for about 2 to 3 years resulted in that.
Wow. So you literally, you've lost how many kilograms?
I think around about 35 kilograms.
Wow. So guys, if you are listening, I just want to preface this. Jan just shared a photograph of where he was 35 kilograms heavier, and doing this work, going through this work and doing what he's done. Literally, looking at you now, compared to that, definitely 35 kilograms lighter. That's amazing.
And this is the point, because it was deep core identity work. It was permanent. I don't need to go calorie counting. The point is the gut had to become accustomed to having a voice in certain areas. I had to adjust habits gradually so the results were sustainable. That's what it means to work with the gut.
Sure. That's amazing. Just lastly, an example of how this would work in a corporate environment, top executive, and someone who I don't know. Give us an example of where you've actually used these three brains.
So one of the toughest spaces that we take that we see now in corporates is obviously your downsizing of companies. People need to go in a certain direction with the company, and we need to they call it right sizing, but we all know what that means.
Yeah.
So many people experience this time of turmoil with the people that need to go, and it can be devastating for an executive who makes the call. And what this process does is it gives you the factual perspective that this is really truly what's busy happening, and we have to take it seriously. But we can bring in the empathetic human element to it too. So if this is the inevitable, how do we do this humanely, sensitively, empathetically? And from the gut level, what does the company need to sustain? And what would this person need after all is said and done? And whether it's you apply this methodology or not, it's a traumatic space for most people.
Yeah.
The question is not whether life is going to chuck these situations at you. It's when and how integrated are you going to arrive at the wisest decision possible. So it's I've my a very good example is working with my wife who works in the corporate sector. She frequently finds that she just needs to really check in with her heart and gut to resolve certain tensions, because it's a high pressure environment, just to let off some steam in a very constructive manner. So it's very applicable to corporations, very applicable in the organizational setting, especially as part of emotional intelligence, leadership development training, or initiatives or programs.
Absolutely, I love this. Jan, as you can hear, I could probably sit. We could have it like we did last time. We got carried away. If we want to know more about you and more about how you do what you do, where is the quickest way to get hold of you?
The quickest way is to pop me an email, jan.niemand@rescriptconsulting.com. You're more than welcome to check out our website, Rescript Consulting, but do not judge us. We are busy doing it, redoing it currently. I did not listen to my heart brain last year, November, and a virus completely decimated my website. Talk about listening to the heart, where you suddenly realize, oh my goodness, I don't, something is very wrong and I don't know what, but I need, and then you leave it. 2 days later.
Yeah. Fantastic. So guys, if you want to go and check it out, it's www.rescriptconsulting.co.za, or you can check out jan.niemand@rescriptconsulting.co.za. Jan, thank you for your time. Thank you for
.com.
There we go. .com, guys. So make sure it's .com, not .co.za. But all the information will be in the description boxes below. Jan, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for this conversation. It's a whole new intriguing moment for me. So I will be seeing you soon, and have a lekker day, and thanks for chatting.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Cheers for now.
Bye.
Fantastic, Jan. So I'm just going to stop it.